My name is Mary Kim, for those of you who have not met me, and this is part of our Inspire series hosted by Bridge Innovate. I am a senior consultant at Bridge Innovate. We are a global network of business strategists, consultants, and designers that team up with you to spark distinctive design, courageous leadership, and agile change to transform your organization for growth and good. So the goal of our Inspire series that you're being part of is to share valuable insights and lessons to support your innovation journey. And of course, we're providing this remote opportunity so we can have as many of you join us. Today's program, as you see on the screen, is Unpacking Post-Covid-19 with Futures Wheel. So as you heard Jenny ask you, if you are joining us later down the road, we'll keep on asking you to type your name and organization into the chat box that's located at the bottom and top of your menu. If you're new to Zoom technology, we are going to ask our viewers to go ahead and mute themselves for the time being. There will be an opportunity for us to have more of a discussion later down the road, just so that we can limit any feedback we may have as we progress with the program. All right, so let's get, as Jenny mentions in the chat box, you can also use the chat for asking any questions, or if you have any comments along the way, please use that feature. So what I'm going to ask Colin to do, we're going to do a quick Zoom poll so that we can choose which COVID-19 trend you think will have the greatest impact on the organization that you're a part of. So there are a selection of 5 that you see on the screen that's propped up. So if you will pick one, and you can submit your answer, and we'll take a look at that in just a second. All right, so the results are in. So we see digital transformation, working from home, and social distancing, those being the top selection. So thank you, Colin. So that's interesting to see as we continue our conversation. So what we will be doing today, you'll see here today, we're going to be spending our time focusing on these primarily those areas here, focusing on strategic foresight. What is it? Why do people use strategic foresight, and who's using it? And we'll talk, I'll ask Jenny to share a little bit about the foresight mindset, especially for a lot of our leaders who are interested in implementing this and organization-wide. What is the mindset you need to have to be successful? And share a little bit about the framework that we put together. We've been kind of dissecting this methodology for some time now, so we're excited to share our point of view. And we'll jump right into the exercise so that you get to test out a couple of our tool Futures Wheel and unpack post-COVID-19 more broadly, so that you're able to utilize the framework that we put together for that tool and hopefully take something away. And we'll introduce you something that we're going to be launching in June as an opportunity for you all to take part of. All right, so let's jump in. So what is strategic foresight? Some of you may be already familiar with strategic foresight. Strategic foresight is the practice and capabilities of anticipating and planning for the future. So corporate or organization-wide foresight is applied with the expectation that it will help the organization to break away from path dependency and help decision makers to define superior courses of action and ultimately enable superior firm performance. So what you see here, why is strategic foresight critical for success? According to the analysis conducted by Renee Robeck, and who is a professor of strategy at the School of Business and Social Sciences at Aarhus University in Denmark, partnered with a manager of Deloitte Consulting and lead digital strategy service offering for the Monitor Deloitte practices in Germany. So it's quite well used in Europe, and put together this analysis. This research was measured, the stats that you see on the screen here, measured the future preparedness in 2008, so select firms, and its impact on firm performance in 2015, so over a length of 7 years. And the results indicated that future preparedness to be a powerful predictor for becoming an outperformer in the industry, for attaining superior profitability, for gaining superior market capitalization growth. So as you see here, you can see just in stats how the methodology has been able to improve firm performance. And as what we've seen in the market is that more and more firms are trying to be future prepared. Some of the key firms and organizations that we have seen, worked with, we've learned alongside have been, Disney, Deloitte, Shell, Lockheed Martin, Nike, Eastman. I mean, this is just a small grouping of companies in just such a broad sector, right? You see consumer goods, consulting agency, firms that are focused on experiences and chemicals, everything, in between. IBM, another very well-known firm for using strategic foresight. And, what people don't know is that, just like design thinking, which we often use for our work, is that it has a lot of different tools that you can utilize based on your needs. And today we will get to test out some of that. And what you see on the screen as well are some of the strategic questions I hope that our firms are asking themselves, like, to prepare, what's really driving intensifying competitive pressures. As we all know, the market is continuously growing to be more competitive. What are those pressure points? Long-term opportunities, and what do we need to do today to change course if our outlook is looking, not so great? What are some changes we can make today? So what I asked Jenny today is talk a little bit about foresight mindset. Jenny, would you like to chime in?
Sure, thanks, Mary. When we look at the mindset that's needed to really power strategic foresight, these types of competencies come to mind, and we love this set that it's been published in the Strategic Foresight Primer by the Future School. They're one of our big partners in doing strategic foresight work. We love the methodologies that they advocate and the resources that they bring to the market in strategic foresight. If you look through this mindset framework here, some of the ones that stand out to me particularly include the concept of thinking in multiples. And in today's environment, with such an extraordinary crisis facing us with this pandemic, we have to look at our leaders and look at our strategists in our organization and say, what are the multiple scenarios that we need to anticipate so that we can prevail through this complexity? So thinking in multiples is certainly a critical competency for the foresight mindset. And then you can see, starting at the beginning, things like craving curiosity, constantly scanning, constantly looking at trends and patterns so that you can begin to imagine what are the implications if this pattern were to grow in significance? What are the implications to our organization? Or even in certain patterns, looking deeper at the root cause of those particular patterns to really understand what are the underlying causes going on. And certainly in this time of looking at foresight, this is an opportunity for courage. We can no longer be complacent of thinking that the history is the predictor of the future. We have to be adept at monitoring these foresight type trends and have the courage to explore these possible scenarios and then prepare our organization to be ready to thrive in this unpredictable time. Certainly diversity, this is an area that many corporations are embracing now, more in terms of the employment arena. But we're thinking in terms of diversity of perspective, making sure that we are broadening our insights, asking people from outside our organization their perspective on markets, their perspective on critical business spectrums, so that we're opening up our thought patterns here and welcoming diverse thoughts and different points of view. And then, of course, this one I love, Mary, around thinking outrageously, because I think often our fear of failure and our fear of risk inhibit our ability to think broadly in terms of either great success or great failures, or how a pandemic might impact our organization. But if we get ourselves and get our leaders comfortable thinking about outrageous possibilities, then when even a moderate shift occurs, we're better prepared. We have the skills and foresight to come around those complexities and think of solutions and mobilize solutions. And then in terms of connecting the dots, many times it's a systems type of explosion that happens, and we're experiencing that now with COVID-19, where there are many complexities that are occurring simultaneously. How do we connect those dots and begin to formulate these multiples that our organization needs to prepare to act on? And the one thing I would just say, Mary, is organizations look to mobilize this foresight mindset. It's not just a one-time and be done activity. This is an ongoing mindset that leaders today need to constantly be nurturing with their teams and within their organization, because it is a very dynamic marketplace. And so we have to constantly be going through this process in order to have our organizations be prepared for these complex shifts. So back to you, Mary.
Thank you, Jenny. So we've learned a little bit about the foresight mindset and the importance of those key critical areas that Jenny shared. Here's the framework, so that you can see strategic foresight at a glance. The firms I shared with you earlier and many more others, implement strategic foresight with the goals of spotting trends ahead of competitors, gaining deeper insights into such trends that will affect their organization, identify the most effective response, and ultimately gaining a competitive advantage over others. So what you see here is those, covering those key critical areas. Some of you may be familiar with a framework that looks very similar if you've already been looking at strategic foresight. Just like empathy, I find, and many of you probably, if you are fans of human-centered design thinking, we find that to be, most crucial component when it comes to really driving human-centered innovation. To me, for foresight, scanning is that component where it's a most critical step in building a future prepared firm. So of some of these tools and process that's listed here, today we're going to be touching base about the futures wheel. So the context, many of us are feeling it, right? I was just muting myself because of the whole component about I have a dog drinking water that impacts my working because I'm working remotely. There are so many things that are very little and at a large context, as you see here, the global challenges converging at once. All these businesses, organizations, people facing unprecedented tension of demands and goals and all the th40% in between. I was recently just talking to an educator of our county, just talking about how 30-40% of their students have absolutely no touch point right now with their educators because of limitations of resource. So what are the implications of COVID-19 as we progress? And one way to, for us to look at that is really scanning what's out there. I just, with the help of our team, pulled just a couple of things, because I know with organizations, a lot of that heavily depends on statistics around consumers, like our users and our clients, our constituency. So here, just trying to compare to some of the key critical moments of our history in the recent past, from 2000, the 9/11 to the, financial kind of critical point of 2008, 2009, those dips that you're seeing in consumer expectations, how COVID-19 is kind of reaching that point, not quite yet, but you see the dip as it progresses on the very right. And talking about consumer optimism, here from McKinsey & Company, it talks about, how the consumer optimism typically is higher at the beginning and the end life stage of a contagion curve. So, just based on how, China, South Korea, they're probably at the moment of nearing or hopefully, right? We don't know, but more mature stage, whereas US, we're just kind of ramping up. We're starting to ramp up really critically in the next couple of weeks as the government projected. So what does that look like? And what we like to do with PESTEL analysis here, you might have seen it too, when we think of futures, we often use this framework to help us consider a broad range of future patterns and shifts, so that we're not only focusing on one major area of something that broadly is impacting my organization, my team, my community or city or nation broadly. So then using future wheel, we can take sometimes, one significant trend and look at the future implications and hopefully plan out something that will help us with our performance. So here's a quick example of a futures wheel. Example is from Mind Tools. It's a great platform if you haven't visited before. Lots of great resources here. So as what you see in the center is that critical change or decision that has been made. And this is just a broad general example. So for a firm to have a 20% budget cut, what are some direct implications that you may see? So you see that in the red circle, where it might be can't take on new staff. And then from there, you see 3 other indirect impact bubbles or consequence bubbles pop up that relates to no work for recruitment manager, can't replace retiring staff, can't recruit new office manager, and so forth. So by continuously expanding that circular map, you're able to look at the broad range of implications or consequences that one key decision can generate. And hopefully from either positive or negative implications or consequences, you're able to come up with an action plan for your firm. So I want to jump quickly into our test drive of applying that to the broader post-COVID-19 landscape. So one of the things that I would like to look at is social distancing, as you saw earlier on the slide. Here is just a quick thing that our team, we've been scanning, right? Just like as we would for strategic foresight process. So what we see here is Nevada, the homeless group here. Essentially the first layer of defense failed because the church that was housing these homeless group had someone who tested positive and couldn't house any more homeless people. So then these people were left out, and as you see here, the grid has been made so that people are separated enough for the social distancing guidance, and they're now in a parking lot. So you see a lot of that here, a lot of memes, a lot of companies kind of tackling this head on. So what does that look like for a broader landscape? So the exercise itself, we're going to split us up. So each of the group will have, Jenny, Colin, and I working together. So those of you that are joining will be split up. And we're going to look at, what is the direct first order implication of social distancing, and pick, maybe our facilitators, breakout room facilitators can help decide which path you want to take of all the 6 PESTEL categories. And then let's see if we can get to the second order of implications and impact from there. And once we get to that point, let's check back and see where we all landed. So what I'm going to do now is ask Colin to help us get into our breakout rooms and start working on this mural workboard. It looks like we're all back in the main room. So it sounds like we had a couple of technical difficulties, but it looks like Colin and Hannah, you all had some progress. So I'm going to zoom in and see if you all can talk about the technological implication or impact of social distancing, what you come up with here.
So I guess I can go over this top right here. We're really trying to figure out how we can still keep our normal operations going. And I manage a grant program here, and a lot of our work, at least at this stage in the cycle, is talking with applicants and running workshops and getting people to understand what we can provide funding for. So we're trying to shift that virtually, and I think some of the longer term implications might be that once we have a better understanding of tools and platforms available to us, we can offer both in-person and virtual sessions and end up having a broader reach across the region, which ideally would then result in more projects coming through our program. And we primarily fund affordable housing. So it would be great if we could have more reach, if we have a better understanding of how to get in touch with people.
Great. Thanks for sharing. One of the things I was hoping to unpack with my group was just having conversations about, the employee benefits. I know that's a hot conversation in legal right now, especially with the Bloomberg campaign, if you recently heard of that, and trying to utilize executive compensation as a way to mitigate, what is the longer impact of that. Let me go ahead and go back to the presentation because we are actually already at time, and talk about, what are the things that you would do after you've had a chance to really build out the futures wheel framework that you see here. Of course, there's no obligation to have the PESTEL elements included, but I like to have that, as I mentioned earlier, to make sure that I'm covering a broad external influencers to the framework. So what you would do once you have built out the framework as a team, it's fairly simple, but it's a great way to analyze, what's come out of it, the direct and indirect consequences. And sometimes you will see that indirect consequences of a direct consequence can lead, you will see some common threads of maybe a key consequence popping up in multiple spots. So it's nice to be able to see that in one framework. And one of the things that we typically walk through is when you have a negative consequence or impact point, is trying to come up with ways to brainstorm how you're going to mitigate that risk. And if you see positive consequences, brainstorm how you plan to take full advantage of it, and being able to prioritize that, because you will not be able to try to cover everything, but having a criteria and being able to apply that to come up with an action plan in the end, so that you are becoming more future prepared. So it's one of the things, constantly scanning for those signals and trends that are out there. It's great that a lot of these places, I think right now, is coming up with these reports of COVID-19 and what are the implications will be. But you start to, look at things that you think will be kind of a key critical factor in impacting your organization or community, and build it out as a team. So you have a broad, diverse perspective. So one of the things, we want to share with you all too is Futures Wheels is just one of many, tools that we like to use in the process. But as mentioned earlier, continuously scanning and being able to apply that to things that, will impact your organization is critical. So one of the things that we've been developing is this Foresight Scouts that will be launching in June, where we will be helping our participants with competency of data mining, creating logical forward-looking future views, and at the end of that, being able to come up with kind of an analysis, a brief to report out to your leadership team. So that's coming up, and if you're interested, just reach out to us. I'd be happy to set up a one-on-one to dig more deep into this. We like to use a platform called Digo. It's more of a knowledge management tool where you can easily tag, just manage a lot of the information that you're seeing out there. You'll see a lot of the future foresight, strategic foresight firms using this as a way to aggregate information and analyze as a group. And here's a quick timeline from June to September. It is a 12-week engagement where it will be completely virtual from launch to finish. And today that's what we have, but I know that we had some, challenges with technical difficulty earlier, which I guess comes with remote working as well. But I highly encourage you to reach out to me one-on-one to see, you know, even if you want to continuously unpack COVID-19 for your organization, as Hannah had helped report out. And I'd like to thank everyone for joining today and spending your 30-minute, actually a few more minutes with us on a Friday. I hope you have a great weekend. And thank you again for joining Bridge Innovates Inspire series, Unpacking Post-COVID-19 with Future Roles. And we will see you next time, hopefully. Great. Bye, everyone.